Hello, welcome to Video Mania 2, and as always, I'm the dude manning the counter, Duncan, and today we're going to talk about the original, The Fast and the Furious. I decided to talk about this today because the latest F9 is coming out Friday, so I thought I'd talk about the one that started it all, and this series has certainly evolved since then, so I'm going to talk mainly pretty much about the first one. So let's get started. The first one, it came out in 2001, June 2001, and was directed by Rob Cohen, stars Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, Michelle Rodriguez, and Jordana Brewster. And the plot is pretty simple, and it very strongly resembles a movie that came out in 1991 called Point Break, starring Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze. There's a very similar thread, in the sense that Paul Walker plays Brian O'Connor, but he goes under the name Brian Spillner to infiltrate the street racing circuit. And that is his cover because somebody from the street racing circuit is stealing DVD players from a semi-truck. And so he needs to get into that world because they know they trace the tire tread marks from that. So he works at a auto parts store for these specialty cars as his cover, and then he goes and he knows he has to meet a guy, Vin Diesel's character, Dominic Toretto, because the circuit, which is illegal, revolves around him. So if he's not sure if he's the one hitting all these trucks, but he knows who is, and that's his best ticket. So he infiltrates this area, and the cops give him a fancy Mitsubishi Eclipse that's neon green, and they spent 80 grand on it, and you know, he kind of teases himself to drive it, but he needs to infiltrate this gang, so he dives right in, and initially he has trouble getting in. They're a very close-knit unit, and they don't want him in there, but he comes in, and he kind of gets their respect because at a drag race, they were all putting up like 2 grand, 5 grand, stuff like that, just throwing money around. So in order to really get his way into there and earn some kind of street cred with him, he puts his car on the line. Whoever wins the drag race on the LA streets gets his car. A nice one, by the way. So he races for slips, basically. That's how they call it. So he gets in and he races, and Dominic Toretto beats him because, you know, he's an experienced driver. But then the cops come and break up the race, and Dominic Toretto kind of gets to hide, and the cops start chasing him, and Brian O'Connor picks him up, and they get out of there because everybody scrambled. So he keeps him out of jail, and Dominic Toretto has already done time, and he can't be locked in a cage. So O'Connor, you know, helps him out in this respect. So he gets in his good graces and starts to learn a little bit more about the crew and the start of this family, which is a later theme throughout all these films. And the thing I liked about this is Brian O'Connor has to make some decisions, you know, because Dominic Toretto has this charisma, and is he completely bad? I mean, he has struggles with that, or is he loyal to his police force? Because there's a lieutenant that he works with that he looks up to as well, and the lieutenant cares about him. So it's all, he's really conflicted. And to add on to that, he falls in love with Dominic's sister. So it really adds a lot of elements to the characters, and there's conflict, and you really get caught up in that. And the street racing, too. So, like all the cars and all the different things you could do to them. I mean, there's like old Nissan 240 SXs that have been modified, some old Nissan Maximas. Dominic Toretto has this RX-7 from the early 90s that he modifies really cool, and then that Eclipse that I talked about earlier, it gets blown up. But later they build this orange Toyota Supra that's absolutely amazing, and Toyota Supras are highly collectible, by the way. But anyway, back to the movie itself. Rob Cohen said many times when he was looking, he found out about this street racing world and wanted to make a movie about it. So that's basically what he did. And, you know, it was really cool, the cultures that were in there, because it was just the love of cars. There were all different kinds of people, and it wasn't a big deal. They were just there for the love of cars and, you know, the thrill of racing. So it was a cool how this community, different backgrounds, all came together. And it all happened very organically. It just felt very natural, and it was really good. So the thing that another thing the soundtrack throughout has got some hip hop, but it also has a lot of early 2000s rock. So that really hit a chord with me too. Now, the thing about this film that really stands out to me is how organic everything is, but it's still kind of grounded. I mean, it's a little far-fetched in some of the stuff that happens, but it's a movie and it's an action movie, so you're willing to, go with it. Suspend the disbelief, they say. Now, the thing that I'm going to talk about the later entries in the series a little bit. I'm a fan of all of them until the Fate of the Furious just got a little too convoluted and absurd to me, and there's just too many characters here. And this next one I'll probably see because I just want to go to a theater again. I haven't been in forever, so I want to experience that. But I've already heard F9. It just takes to new levels of absurdity, and this series has kind of devolved a little bit because I'll compare it to James Bond, because James Bond, I'm a huge fan of that series. In Moonraker, James Bond goes to space and has a laser fight, and there's a guy in a space station, and it's really crazy and over the top. And so the people that ran James Bond decided to follow it up with For Your Eyes Only, which is a very grounded James Bond and wasn't over the top at all. It had action sequences, but it didn't have all the gadgets. It was more just a spy thriller. It still had some of the James Bond stuff, but still it was more grounded. And then James Bond, the gadgets and all the stuff got a little far-fetched again in Die Another Day, which resembles nowadays a lot of the later Fast and Furious films. And, it was Pierce Brosnan's last one, and it started getting a little, far-fetched and absurd even for James Bond. And so they grounded it with Casino Royale. And so I kind of wish this series had done that. Whereas, like, after Furious 7, which I loved, I think it was a great send-off to Paul Walker, and, it was a really well-done movie, and I liked it. But it started just going to that level of, it's just getting so, almost like a superhero movie, whereas the original, the cars were there, there was CGI, but it was a lot more practical effects, and it was a modest movie. It didn't have this massive budget, and it didn't have all these characters, crammed into 2.5 hours. It's just an hour and 40-minute chase movie with some really cool characters and a soundtrack. And I kind of miss that about the series. But so I've heard the latest one, it's become memes how far over the top they can take, and I heard this latest film really just goes super crazy because, I've heard some people say, like, well, James Bond does stuff that is impossible. Yes, they take the laws of physics and bend it. Sometimes bend it a lot. And the Fast and Furious has always taken the laws of physics and bended it pretty good bit. But now it seems they've just thrown them out the window. I mean, when I saw the Fate of the Furious and they were racing on ice next to a torpedo and, like, steering it, something like I can't remember exactly, but it was like, all right, this is getting a little much. And, I have a high tolerance for that. But this movie, it just got too far with Fate of the Furious. But back to the original one, this was a very organic and practical, as I've said, and I just really loved how everything flowed really nicely, and you invested in these characters, and you can see why it's still so popular today. I mean, this thing really tapped into something that was, I guess, lacking at the time, and people really connected to these characters in that world, and it was a very real world. I mean, it was, one you could see actually happening, and I think that's kind of missing now, but this film started it all, and I see why it's so popular today, because these characters really connected. And that's all I have to say now, and thanks for sticking with me this long. It went a little longer than I thought, but I will talk about Too Fast, Too Furious next, because that's another movie that I think doesn't get us due a little bit. So anyway, hope you all are doing great, and are you going to check out the new Fast and the Furious? How do you think the series has evolved? Let me know in the comments, and take care till next time.